Ian, Kristina, welcome. Political
Thank
Hope.
you.
Thank
Hello.
you. Wonderful to be here.
Amazing. I find myself in the field over here with you guys.
Beautiful sunny day. Thanks for showing up.
So my first question always for everybody who comes on the show is, what does political hope mean to you? But I want to throw it to both of you, Ian and Christina. What does that mean to both of you guys separately?
I can go
Well,
first.
sure.
Um, okay. Yeah. I think, in our work, what we do is so the opposite of focused on politics and also advocacy and lawmaking. And those things are so important and they are creating what we exist within, but also they take so long and there are so many people involved and it is a very slow process. And what we found is that oftentimes it is reactive to what is actually happening on the ground. And so, where we're focused is creating political hope through action and creating models that politicians and other people involved in advocacy can see and then replicate and then duplicate and then write legislation to support so that we can see more of that. And that's really where our attention and focus and energy drives into all day, every day.
Love that. Ian, what do you got?
So for me, I guess directly, political hope is that tomorrow is better than today,
Mhm.
especially now. We're in such dark times, so that, we see a light and we're moving towards it and we're building towards something greater than ourselves, greater than today is my hope.
That's beautiful, both of you. And I feel what you're doing, working with farmers and reimagining farming itself in a way that is actually equitable and possible for everybody, is in a way like one of the greatest political actions we can do. I mean, I know where I come from in India, one of the best ways that we stay sovereign against tyranny, against oppression, is actually having right relationship with land. Like that's like the most important thing we could do, right? So, I mean, I'm curious, is that why do you guys do that? Why do you guys focus on farming? Like, why is that so important to you? I mean, I'll start with you, Christina. Why is that important to you?
Well, I mean, when you say like, I just really appreciate that you just said like redefining or reimagining what farming is because that has been such a pivotal focus point for us ever since we started the Farmers Land Trust is not meaning farming like these hundreds of acres of monocrops and like huge consumer tractor, exporting for animal feeds and biofuels and all these things, but rather people growing food for themselves and their own community, which is not what people think about when they think about farming. But that's what we mean, and that's what we're supporting. And it's important to me because I do actively do this in my daily life. And not because I grew up as a farmer, not because I grew up in agriculture at all, but because I was very focused and passionate about getting food sovereignty and food security to the people who lacked it and saw agriculture as a way to do that. And not agriculture like corn and soy, but agriculture like what the USDA defines as specialty crops, which is just food, vegetables, fruit, like that ability to grow your own food is how we can address food security and food access, but we can only do that if people have land to grow food on. And so that is why I am personally so focused on securing land for the people who can steward for vegetable and fruit and actual food production for communities, but who can't afford the land.
So, and I was really struck from an early age of like, we are so separated from land, from each other, from ourselves, and it's intentional. And it's, centuries of intention and systems set up to create this structure. And so much of it is for political power and control in so many ways. So, unless we're going to do something about that root cause of things, like we're dancing on the surface, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
like how do we focus directly on land and food to create a different pathway to reconnect instead of separate? And so that drove me to this work passionately and really the understanding of that historic context, but then also the like seeing in the last few decades the growth in communities across the United States of like coming together around food, whether it's, the growth of farmers markets, of CSA, of like just sharing food in different ways like provides a wonderful pathway that many people have like engaged in different ways, but it's a wonderful pathway to reconnect. And so like using land and food as the foundation to reconnect with one another just seems so base level importance for how we live in the world, how we go forward, how we address anything else that's happening.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because my mom grew up on the farm, water buffalo farm in India in Punjab, right? And they left, I mean, we're farming is kind of funny. It's ties all the whole world together, right? Like there's it's all connected, right? I mean, think about even like the slave trades that happened in America. Those crops, like the cotton crops, were brought from India, right? Because India was one of the leaders in cotton production for the rest of the world, and then it came to America. But anyways, there's a lot of like connecting dots, connecting all of us. But anyways, my mom immigrated from India, she like didn't farm at all anymore. And I didn't grow up on the farm, right? Because we grew up in America. We didn't have any connection to land here, right? And yet now when I'm farming and I tell my mom, "Hey mom, come join me on the farm," she's like, "I already did that. You can do it. I'm comfortable," right? So you can see how fast one generation people can get disconnected from the land and comfortable, but not really comfortable, It's kind of weird,
Yeah.
right? Have you guys ever heard of a concept called civic agriculture? Curious.
No.
So,
Curious. There's a whole school on it. It's a wonderful book. Definitely worth reading. Here's the book. Civic Agriculture: Reconnecting Farm, Food, and Community. Thomas Lyson was a sociologist who researched, right? He like was like, hey, how do people, what are healthy communities? Like, what are healthy societies? And he found that the more that the food production, storage, and processing was localized, the healthier that the civics of that community was healthier.
Hmm.
So everybody's more engaged, they're more civically engaged, socially engaged, the elders and the children, everybody's part of the food system. And then it's
Hmm.
healthier. Interesting.
Beautiful. Yeah.
but also makes total sense. I mean, absolutely. I think, we all, well, I hear very often from many people how they wish they could live in community or they wish they could go buy a piece of land with all their friends and family and farm. And part of me is, like you can be in community wherever you are. Like start where you are, and I mean, for instance, my husband and I, we farm, we grow vegetables using organic and biodynamic methods, and we sell to restaurants and grocery stores, but also in bulk to CSAs and individuals. So people get all of their canning tomatoes or carrots to freeze or, like cabbage to ferment, like whatever it is, and bulk, and then like store their food. And then, we do the same. And like we host community every Sunday for like a potluck and music gathering. And, we'll have everybody out shucking corn to help us put it in the freezer. And like, that is so uncomfortable in so many ways for us. Like hosting people is uncomfortable. Bringing meals to people when they're sick is putting you out. Like doing all these things that are required to be a part of a community is uncomfortable and it takes time and it puts you out. But then that's the way you have community. Like you
Yeah.
have to be a community member to have the community exist around you. And when you rely on each other like that, it's such a different way of being. Like when you need the people around you in a different way, then you're more inclined to be respectful of them and care about them and not want to hurt their feelings and want to show up for them in so many other ways. And I see that in my own personal life, but I also see that in these Farmland Commons projects around the country that we have of like these people are living in a reciprocal relationship with one another through this long-term 99-year lease, through this Farmland Commons board participation, through this, project they're engaging on, and then it becomes a deeper relationship that's more meaningful, that then is embedding you in a community that did not exist before. And when you need each other like that, it's a different way of being.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and before we even continue, I'm curious. I would love for you to share with folks out there who are unsure or are curious, what is biodynamic farming? How would you define that, Kristina?
Biodynamic farming is a type of agriculture that looks at the entire farm as one living organism, and we try to reduce as many outputs as possible. So try to create and use as many in farm system loop as possible.
Mhm.
And it is all based off of the teachings of Rudolf Steiner, who wrote the agriculture course, or I guess he didn't write it. I'm sorry. He gave a lecture that was called the agriculture
He's
course,
also
and then
Waldorf.
other
He also
people.
started Waldorf, right? Okay.
Yeah, so anthroposophy is like the umbrella that biodynamic agriculture exists under, and it's very much based off of the moon and the stars, and also homeopathy. It's kind of like
Mhm.
homeopathy, but for the land. And so it takes into account like different microbial properties and thinks more about instead of trying to grow this vegetable right here using organic practices in this 1 square foot of garden, it really thinks about like the farming organism is growing this vegetable. So how do we build up and help amplify the health of this whole farming organism? And so, something that very often is true for biodynamic agriculture is that it's not just vegetable production or it's not just animal husbandry, but it's both because both are needed in a healthy farming ecosystem. So, for instance, we have cattle that we use to make the manure and compost that goes then into our gardens that grows the vegetables that, so it's like rotations around, all the things that you would expect in organic or permaculture
Mhm.
or, but like compiled into a more holistic way of thinking about farming.
It's funny, as you're sharing that, I'm like thinking about how my cousin farms in Punjab with our family farm and out there, and it's very biodynamic. And they use the poop for everything, like from
Yeah.
fuel to like it's fertilizer to building material. Everything is
Yeah. I
upcycled.
think
Yeah.
like so many cultures around the world, it's like, and I've heard other people like refer to it as peasant farming. It's like, or like, indigenous farm. Like so many people call it so many different things, but it's essentially like using life to create life and to support life, and like not trying to input crazy plastics or fertilizers or like, yeah,
All this stuff. In a way too. I mean, it kind of makes me connected to medicine as well, right? Like if you treat the land like that and food like that and our resources like that, then why? Then obviously, I'm saying if you treat it biodynamically, then you're also going to treat the human condition
Right.
biodynamically. But if you don't, it becomes like, hey, let's just blow it up. Let's bring in a chemical. Everything looks like, oh, here's a problem. Let's just blow it up and see. Hopefully, it fixes, right?
yeah, I
Right.
mean, and I just really appreciate that you brought that up too, because it is so much more than the chemical science of things that can be like so factually stated, but more also about the ethereal, spiritual aspect of things, which a human being is comprised of so much more than just the chemical building blocks that build us. And so when you're farming and growing food biodynamically, you're also thinking about how the food is nourishing not just your physical body, but your ethereal and spiritual body. Like, there are aspects to biodynamic agriculture that make complete sense. Like, for instance, like, wood ashes are something that we try to implement and use. We spread them out on the gardens, we put them in the compost pile because as a tree grows, the roots go very deep and are able to access
Mhm.
minerals and elements that we can't see on the crust of earth, but that are deep down within the earth. And so the
Mhm.
roots access that and then they bring them up through the trees. And then the tree limbs fall or a tree dies. And then we use that wood and then we burn it. And then that unlocks all those chemical
Mhm.
compounds that we weren't able to access before, but now we can, and we can like feed them to our plants, which then feeds them to our bodies. And like that makes total scientific sense. Like all of that makes total scientific sense. But then there are aspects of biodynamic agriculture that sound a little woo woo and maybe don't make sense, but they like you take them all, and really, I think that a lot of things that we can explain feel good in other ways, and that's enough for
Yeah,
me.
and I think the woo-woo stuff, the spiritual stuff, the connective tissue, I like to think of it like it making us feel interconnected, right? And maybe whether it's made up or not, I think us having that interconnected relationship with nature, with organisms, whatever they are, small to big, it changes how we show up. It changes how we
Yeah.
care. And when we don't have that interconnected thing, like look at the world now, right? And then you end up
Right.
with all kinds of perversions and how we even treat humans. Like, forget how we treat the earth, we start treating humans terribly too. So I thank you for bringing, this is like so alive for me right now with what's happening in the world. And I think about sometimes like, where does it start, right? Like, does it start? What if the start of how we treat humans actually is how we treat the earth? And in fact, all the biodynamic farmers that I've ever studied with or I've mentorship with, one of the things I really love about them is how they treat pests. And like parents, like whatever. Like they don't actually like they're not angry or hateful or whatever. They're like always like thinking like, oh, what can I do to like help like massage the situation or help maybe turn the pests into actually
Yes,
beneficiaries, right?
yes, 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 yes. Oh my God, I love you said that. So the very first farm I ever lived and worked on was with this like biodynamic grandfather of the Southeast, basically. And I remember asking him, and it just stands out to me so much of what you just said. I remember asking him, like, what do you do about the groundhogs? And he genuinely said, oh, I just plant an extra row for them. Like, well, of course, like that's the way. Like, plant extra. Like, so cute.
Genius, genius. And I mean, I wonder if we do that same, what if we did that the same way we treat humans? Like if we have toxic humans or in our community, somebody's becoming toxic. What if we, instead of being like, so like, oh, we don't want to look at that, or we just like kind of, what if we actually acknowledge like what's the imbalance here? How do we treat that with love? So, I mean, that question also poses to you guys, because I'm sure in the work you're doing, this shows up in ownership situations and control situations and all these navigating. So you guys are kind of also not just farming, Kristina, but you're also farming humans now and social psychology and all this stuff. And this is what, I mean, when I even look at this thing right here, to me, this is a spiritual work in a lot of ways. It's interconnected work. It's like biodynamic farming of people.
Yeah, yeah. People and systems and structures, right? Because we've been separated as people and kind of defined in certain ways, as has land and as has capital in the limited ways, many see capital, but there's many diverse types of capital. So we're looking at that holistically, people, land, multiple forms of capital, and how they can be transformed into more of a shared holistic community structure. And that's a stretch for some, so much of a stretch that some, like don't see what we do as important or having value or meeting their needs, or that anyone is ever going to have interest in what we do. Like we get asked that question a lot of like, how is anyone ever going to, be willing to participate with you? Or why would anyone ever gift land into you? And we take that in knowing that we're experiencing something different, that we are seeing that in real time happen, but it's beyond what some people can even comprehend.
I think related to this too, like back to that, I think it was brought up earlier, which is the how people are always like, oh, I wish I could just like go buy a bunch of land with my family or friends. Like that sounds crazy to people because it doesn't exist in the reality that we live within. Like because the zoning and property laws and like all of the legal structures and real estate structures that we currently have do not support collective ownership. And so like this farmland commons model that does support that, that's like doing this creative, innovative take on land trusts, real estate, land ownership, like all of these things melded into one is creating a new structure where collective ownership is possible. And it is this thing that people crave. Like they crave to be in community in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it right there. Is that that's literally that's what I've actually hit up against is people are like, but how? Like,
Right.
what is the system? I don't like it. It's hard to conceive of it. So I mean, so let's kind of break this down. I mean, I will definitely recommend some videos you guys already have made in the show notes because you guys have already. I really want to acknowledge the work and the labor you guys have done and kind of storytelling and cultivating the conversation, whether short form, long form. You guys have done the work. So thank you for doing that and practicing in the real world with actual situations, which are always very different. But like really quick, just get like what I want to kind of center is on you guys are doing this 99-year lease, which is kind of to me this is like the heart of it, right? And then everything branches from the heart. Is that correct? Like this, so focus on 99-year lease and then building around that.
Yeah, I'd share. I think maybe there's two hearts at play. Like one is that 99-year lease that really speaks to like equity and justice for individuals, for people. Like they can have security, they can have equity, they can hold land in that way. The other heart is the nonprofit common structure, the 501c25, that land does not have to be owned privately as a commodity, that our heart is also land should be decommodified into community common structures. So it's both in like how we see and relate and value land and how we see, value, and relate with people.
That's funny because like when I was living in Hawaii, that the 99-year lease was so negatively like looked upon, right? It was like something like very colonial. But you guys
Right.
are like decolonializing it in a way.
I mean, that, yeah, the thing is, like, we live in this system. Like, we live in this colonized, crazy system that layers pieces of paper on top of land and calls it sane. Like, we live within this. Like, what do we do? Like, we have to do something. Like, how can we live within this system that is real, but then also do good with it?
Yeah.
And I think even for us, like, we hear people hear the term lease and they get very offended by it because they're thinking about how a lease is typically used. And in typical lease relationships, it is a power dynamic of owner to lessee. And that lease is typically used and geared toward the protection of the landowner, not the lessee.
Mhm.
And so, in this way, we're still using that legal tool, yeah, but in a completely different way. Like, the lessee is also part of the ownership structure. So, they're leasing land essentially from themselves, and they're determining what the lease rates are ahead of time. And it's also giving them this equity building component where they can own infrastructure, they can own built improvements, they can own housing in it. And also, 99 years is just as long as state law will allow. I mean, we'd make it for longer if we could, but it doesn't go any longer than that. 99
Oh.
years is as long as it will allow. And really, that's a statement of like, this is your land. I could go on because there are other things about it that make it very different and like secure. And the fact that it's written with the priorities and focus on giving that lessee as many rights and as much autonomy as possible. Like, this is an open resource template though. Like, anybody could go on our website and not only see what the template is, but also see them in practice. Like, you can see 99-year leases that are signed and in effect right now. So like, you can see for yourself like how drastically uniquely different these are.
I'd share too. So much comes down to like the relationships, like we're saying, and the kind of distance between relationships.
Mhm.
So right, like a 99-year lease on Hawaii where a individual or community has a lease from Dole or some other corporate entity, like they don't have a relationship with that lessor who's giving them a lease. Like in this model, it's a direct relationship. It is community. It's creating this structure that builds community around farm holding property. So it's a far different relationship. One, like who the people are, but two, like what the distance is between that. Like these people that are involved in any farmland commons, a lot of it's virtual, some of it's in person, but they're meeting directly. They're holding relationship, building trust with one another, and shortening that distance between them. And that's a huge difference. Like there's right, these legal structures are used by other people in different ways. Like, and part of it is novel in the way we use them, but part of the uniqueness is really like who's at the table, like who's holding the decisions, who's holding the controls, within the Farmland Commons 501c25 structure, within as leaseholder within that structure, that those parties are far different. Like we feel that, the need for a national structure that's locally rooted in place and has collaboration across local, regional, national partners is really important. And we see far too many times the debate between like which is better, the binary choice of local or
Yeah.
national, and there's benefits to both, but either one by itself has limitations. So we see kind of how do we collaborate across scale and yet keep things at a human relationship level.
I love that. And here's some examples. Here's the one in Michigan. I want to, I think this is awesome. I mean, if you maybe Christine, if you want to share kind of like what is the win of this, but also I want to let folks know that, here are on one of the web pages, there is actually you could download templates and then you can work on those templates. And I would also like, so I'm going to ask two questions. So hopefully we'll pin this, okay? Yes, there's earth and heart, but I'm actually curious to hear like maybe like two or three different types of farm commons and like how they're different. That'd be cool to kind of hear that really quickly. But also, I just want to acknowledge this, you guys. Like, this is cool to kind of think about this process. I don't know if this is an order of operation you guys shared, but the shared values, bylaws, lease agreement. But the shared values is like, that's a really gooey thing right there that I feel like it can happen right away or it can take time. But I think I really want to value that you guys brought that into the space. Is like creating the shared value system to build this around.
Yeah, it
Thank you,
was really
sir.
important. Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you. So I feel like this whole time you've been like, man, you guys are great job in this, great job. And it's like, oh, it's so
Hey,
nice
listen,
to be
listen.
seen. Thank you.
I'm a total hater. Okay, like if people are not, I will tell you, and trust me. But you guys are really doing great work. I really want to
Thank
acknowledge.
you.
Well,
Thank
and we
you.
do hear from some who are more on the headspace. Why do you even need these shared values? Like they're not they're not a contract. People don't sign them. They're not needed to be recorded to incorporate the entity. Like they say the same thing as the other documents. Let's do away with them. And so it's, yeah,
But also, past experience has led us to create this, which is that it's very difficult to be working on something with a community for months and then you get to align within one of these legal documents that's like no pesticides and then they're shocked like they didn't know that that was part of it and we're like wait, have we been working? So these shared values do a lot of things. So one of them is to get on the same page about
Right,
like, this is what we're all deciding up front, like our values, principles, core beliefs, and that's going to pave the way for these
right,
future things. But then also it's an exercise in working together.
right,
And, there has to be like conflict is healthy and you have to be able to bring things up to each other and talk through things.
right.
And so it's an exercise in that in a lower stakes arena before you get into these bylaws and leases and so forth. So many reasons for that shared values. And I think another thing, just like those templates that are right underneath that are actually like download them, use them, that I think is such a breaking down of a barrier that exists in so many places where people like want to do this but don't know how because legal support is so financially out of reach for so many and also typical run-of-the-mill everyday lawyers like they're not thinking about this sort of thing. That's not what they spend their time doing. It's not they don't care to try to like to have this outside of the box perspective legal framework already established that you can just drop your own name and organizations into is like a huge opportunity to go so much further without having to spend the money and time that we've already spent, you know?
Yeah, and I'm curious too. Like, I mean, really, just really quickly, why do you guys feel compelled to make this open source? Like, most people are so like possessive and like don't want to. They're trying to hoard everything. What makes you guys feel like you could just share this like this?
It's just like
What
a
is that? What's your
shocking,
audacity?
it's
What's
just
your
like,
audacity to like share?
we're
I
here to
know, it's just like the
change the
weirdest thing.
world, right? And it's not just land, but it's knowledge and power and access to things. Like we don't put our values into a box and then live separately from that box. Like they permeate everything we do. So this is an example of like our values in moving land into a commons is like knowledge should be a commons as well.
Nice. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
but like in this, we want to see land ownership, land use, land stewardship all be different. And we won't be able to do that by ourselves. So our greatest hope would be that other people do it too. So
Right.
like what can we do to catalyze other people doing it? And it's
Right.
like make it an open resource. Let everybody use it. Turn it into a movement, not this thing that this one organization has to do or else it can't happen.
Yeah, it's not realistic, especially with how much, like America has so much land. I'm just looking at California and it's like, oh my gosh, California is its own project. You're right.
Right.
Which probably maybe why I haven't seen you guys in California yet, but maybe we might have to massage that one there. But so yeah, so please share, like what you shared this one, Christina, curious why this one it hits to your heart, pun intended. But if there's any other ones too, I would love to hear about those. And I'm sure listeners would also be curious how did you guys massage those into happening?
Yeah, so we are, as an organization, only like 2.5 years old, but we've been doing this commons based work longer before that. Just created the Farmers Land Trust to focus specifically on moving land into these common structures. But I shared, well, And so these 7 projects are so drastically different in region, in geography, in type of land, urban versus rural, in type of agriculture practice, in
Mhm.
type of entity that is operating on the ground. I mean, just all over the map in all sorts of ways, like different time of life in stewardship, you know. But I shared this one particularly because on this page, right under the photo of Alita, there is that 99-year lease that's in practice that you could like click and see like how it changed from the template to be a living working 99-year lease that's signed. So that's why I shared that is yeah, that is on that
Cool.
page is, you know.
What? Awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah, so right when you see the picture of Alita, it's in a purple little box that you can
Oh, and there's a video too.
of the land, yeah.
We just got
Oh,
back
so there it
from
is.
we just got
That
back from a farm stop conference in Michigan, and it was my first time in Michigan. I was like, wow,
oh,
there's a lot of people moving the needle in Michigan. I
yeah,
was so
including these
impressed.
people, that's for sure.
They're definitely
So
moving.
right there it says, see the 99-year lease here. Yep. And so like you can see, yep.
Oh, cool. Oh my gosh, this is awesome. So you can actually just see the whole thing here. This is awesome, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and this project is awesome on so many levels. You know, the two kind of leaders in this are the people featured on this page. So Alita here, Kelly, is the 99-year leaseholder, and then Julian, who is just pictured there, is the landowner and they're both part of the Farmland Commons structure. So they're part of creating this community structure, relationships, responsibilities in different ways. But then they're playing such different roles. Like Julian came from and has generational wealth. And so he bought a number of farms in southwestern Michigan to support, bring about community-based food systems work. And
Right.
he's been carrying that forward and working on that for years. And then our kind of introduction and conversations forward are like, in part, together we can do more.
Right.
And that this structure, the Farmland Commons, can really both create a structure to move this forward, and it also can bring in equity and balance out that power
Right.
structure of you, wealthy landholder, trying to welcome in community can be difficult
Yeah.
and can have limitations and can have kind of a overarching imbalance to it.
Yeah.
So the structure can remove that and still allow the community building. And so through conversations, he gifted a farm in that has a long, rich history to it. That farm came in and is now being stewarded by Alita here. So that
Yeah.
transition from wealthy white landowner to younger person of color is what we need 10,000 times over in this country, right? So just that transition of who the people are who hold the decisions and the stewardship and the autonomy and the equity, like bringing about these type of transitions is what we need time and time again. But then that kind of the really beautiful thing I name here is that in so many cases, land transition, people name as a transaction,
Mhm.
and the transaction is like they're done, like
Yep.
or they're starting,
Yep.
like they're they gift the land or they sell the land and that's it. They're leaving, they're done with it, and it's for someone else to deal with,
Right.
whether it's their kids, whether it's new owner, whether it's organization because there's so many things intertwined in a relationship and the expectations and the love and the care involved in that. So it gets messy and it gets difficult and
Yep.
people don't want to engage in that way. But this is a beautiful example of these two people, like they didn't know each other, they didn't hold relationship
Right.
before, and now they're building relationship. They're part of this structure, and they're both building relationship around this farmland commons and being part of that structure, but also in like the care for this farm and the sharing of knowledge and the kind of support for one another going forward. They're planning other collaborative work and collective work and like we being remote elsewhere, like that is our hope that like the relationships in community will happen, and this structure and our work can help bring those together. But that's in so many ways beyond our ability. Like that's up to the local people on the ground in place to do that and take on that hard work. And both people here are doing that. They're taking on the hard work and they're building those relationships outside of us. So it's just so beautiful to see that connecting with one another that's happening here, connecting with the land that's happening here, and the kind of future that's being created right now.
And the nuance in that too, I just want to bring up is that, from what I've experienced just anecdotally in my life, is that is a toxic, sometimes implicit or explicit relationships that happen when people are like, yeah, we want to give the land up, but they want to hold on to power, or want to hold that over on people. And I wonder, I'm curious, does the 501c25 structure that you guys are working with, where you also are a part of this structure of like supporting it, and there's an advisorship, like does that help to ensure that there isn't that toxic relationship between the folks who have had ownership and the new farmers who are excited and enthusiastic about it? Because like literally, you guys, I was on like a 72-acre farm in Maui that was like paradise, and it was billionaire owners that didn't even live on the island. They lived in Singapore and like would never let the farm managers do what they wanted to do. And yet the farm manager's on the land, working with the land, like knows what to do. And so I saw that tension happening in real life. So how does the 501c25 help to make sure that doesn't happen, right? Do you guys?
Yeah. I mean, I've experienced that personally too. And we know so many people who experience that. And I think even when the intentions are so good, like even when the landowner is holding the best intentions and trying their absolute hardest, and even if they're not doing it to hold it over the person, even if they're doing it to like think about their own personal and their own heirs' well-being financially into the future, or like whatever it is that they're holding, the power dynamic still exists. It does not matter what the reasons or what the intentions are. It is still a power dynamic that makes it so that that land steward cannot be fully honest with them or be on equal footing with them in any way, that they're worried about getting kicked off of the land, or they're worried about some sort of retaliation, or they're worried about their tenure, or they're worried about investing too much into a place that they're not going to be at in the future. There's so many layers and intricacies to that. And so removing that ownership from individual and private into this community centered C25 makes everybody have an equal seat at that table. So it's no longer like one person is above the others. In fact, if anyone's above anyone else, it's that 99-year leaseholder, because they're the ones who have every single right legally given to them to how the land is run and stewarded and operated. And so that shift in power dynamic makes a completely different reality possible, like one where it is community based, and like one where honesty and respect are not just a given because I'm scared of you, but like a deserved because we're in this together. And that's such a different way of being in a relationship with land, yes, but also in community and with other people and in a food shed.
And it really like it's a structure, but it's also specifically this legal entity, the 501c25. Like this illustration that's up now on one side of the screen, it shows the whole scope of what a 501c25 can do. And so our use of that 501c25 is purposeful for a number of reasons. One directly here is that we have seen and aware of many 501c3 nonprofits that same power imbalance happens where their mission or their goals or their programmatic work overtakes the farmer who's on the ground on the farm that they own. So this 501c25 is a limited scope landholding entity according to IRS. So there's boundaries to what this entity can do as it exists, as it is incorporated by IRS. So it can only hold land. It can't be the farmer. So it can't tell the farmer what to do. It can't decide to run programs that like conflict with the farmer's operations. It's just a land holding container
Huh.
to hold land, hold relationships, and all use of land is done by leaseholders. So this legal structure cannot be using the land. It can only be holding the land.
Interesting. That's really interesting nuance. And so technically, like a lease, like a leasee or a leaser, or what I don't know what the right language is. What can can start a school on the land, can start a business on the land, can start a farm stop or a food hub or whatever, right? And doesn't have to
Whatever.
ask, doesn't get have to get permission from the former owners.
No, not at all. Like, we always caution people with questions like this that the barriers still exist in zoning, permitting, approvals. Like
Right.
this doesn't you know, give an exempt process to those. Everything else that exists that limits potential still exists.
Right.
This just means that the owner of is something that's limited, that's not having control over or decisions on.
Interesting. I'm really I almost I wish I could have recommended you guys to the Farm Stop conference because this would have been so valuable to so many of the Farm Stop owners all throughout the Midwest that were coming to that event. That were like, how do we build, a farm stop, but with connecting it to local farms, right? And actually
Honestly,
transitioning farm. Oh, go ahead, Christina.
no, sorry. I try to stay on mute when I'm not talking because, like,
Please, please,
yeah,
please, please.
interrupting
No,
people so hard. I was just gonna say we'd love an introduction to them to, like, yeah, to like help tell them about this new option, this new
Yeah,
possibility. In fact, this project that could be local to them. I think
yeah,
that so often the barrier is like we are a small new
yeah,
nonprofit. How do we let people know
yeah,
that this new option exists before it's too late, before land gets put on the market, and before, because really this is helping land access for next generation farmers totally, but it's also helping exiting, aging, retiring farmers who don't know what to do with their land or who to pass it on to or how to transition it. And we're talking not just about farmland being lost, we're talking about business being lost. We're talking about markets and community that have been built around these farms, like the infrastructure that
yeah,
exists, that, like, we're talking about so many valuable things that, if passed with care,
yeah.
could mean a totally different future for so many different communities and like where their food is going to come from. And so, we haven't shared in more depth about other commons projects happening around the country, but many of them are focused on that aging, retiring farmer who, has been stewarding land for decades and is wondering what they're going to do next and like what the pathway out is. And so really this is like addressing two ends of a spectrum that are at such need right now, but that could really help each other.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's really big pain point for me. I mean, I love farming now. I want to do it all the time. I wish I could just do it every day, but I literally don't have any access to land at this moment to do that, right? And so, and there's no way I can afford any decent land, especially in California, right? And so, I think what you guys are connecting to is really alive. And I also know farmers and folks who are retired, or maybe their husband or their wife was a farmer or whatever, their family were farmers, but they're not farmers anymore and they own land. But the land is beautiful and could be feeding a whole community or maybe nearby communities. But that brings up a good question. What do you guys imagine? What would be like the glass ceiling? Like if we broke out of the glass ceiling, and in the next 3 to 5 years, what is Farmland Commons? What do you guys do? Like what's the best possible reality of what's happening with Farmland Commons, and also what's happening with you guys? Like what are you doing in if everything goes according to plan, even beyond plan? What do you think? What do you feel? What's happening? What's happening with Farmland Commons? What's happening with you guys?
well, there's a lot to that answer, right? In different avenues. I guess I will start with one piece of it. Like these seven farmland commons we've created are so distinct, as Christina had named earlier, and really our part of our hope in that was that people will resonate with pieces of that and they'll see themselves or they'll see their own situation, and through that they'll be open to learning about or engaging or stepping into something like that. So that's part of it, was that connecting to people where they're at so
Mhm.
they're open to learn. But then the result of that we'd hope for is that like each of these seven farmland commons have multiplied so many times over. Like, that's each one of these is the pebble thrown in the water, right? And so we hope that each has multiple ripples out of other examples that are similar to that. And for many of those, like to dive in for a moment to like those that are dealing with the elder farmers at the point of transition, like we see that as such opportunity that does not have to be created. You know, like there's so many big problems in the world right now, and the first thing we need to do is like stop the continued harm of things. But with this reality, like the elder farmers who are looking for avenues and are going to let go of their land in some way or another this decade or next. You know, like that is happening. The aging of people and passing of time creates that opportunity. We don't have to do anything to create that opportunity. What we need to do is provide new avenues for them to be aware of and act on so that, you know, the more we can create additional examples, the more others can create additional examples of these commons, but really the more around those elder farmers seeing another option beyond what's available now for the real estate market or traditional conservation work, where they can see a farmland commons as an option available that may resonate and may be the solution for them. That, you know, in and of itself is such a beautiful outcome we'd like to see. So to see so many farmers seeing that as an avenue for them in the future is part of it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could do an entire hour just on this question because, like, because really what it takes to create this is huge. It's so many moving pieces. And, you know, to be legally compliant, to be IRS compliant, to, you know, it's like so many. And then, you know, we're talking about different states and different state laws. Like, land is really expensive. Like, it's so many moving pieces and it's so much work and it's so much money and it's so much time. And yeah, so like we could talk about this forever, but I think just to be more succinct, if I was going to add anything on to what Ian shared, I would add that seeing other land trusts evolve into this use of this model would be also like because so many land trusts exist already and the amount of land and money that they have access to is a lot, and what they could be doing with that to address ownership, access, use, tenure, equity to land in a different way that helps next generation farmers and also climate change when you think about how land is stewarded, but also like community food when you think about what is grown on that land. You know, like they could be doing so much more than just a conservation easement. So like to see land trusts pick up this model and structure and then run with it with what they have access to would be such a huge momentum ignition in this movement.
Yeah, I mean, I live right next to John Muir Land Trust, and what a huge land trust, but not many opportunities to do like this. Commons is not alive yet. It you technically would think, right? It's we're in the Bay Area. It's progressive. Would make sense, but that bridge hasn't been built. So maybe that's another bridge we could build. Anyways, a lot of
Yeah.
possibilities happening here. And also, you know, let me ask you guys this question. You know, I mean, yeah, it's come up a few times in different ways, but how can folks, like, what is the best ways for people to participate with you guys? Like, how can they support you? How can this movement become a movement even more? Yeah, what are the different ways people can participate and support?
I have such a great answer to this because I have been thinking about this so much because everyone asks this. And like,
Yeah,
obviously, if you don't own land and you're not going to donate land, then you're like, how do I get involved? You
yeah,
know, or if you're not like a foundation,
yeah.
you know, or you don't have a donor advised fund and you're not like a DAF advisor, like, how do you, but also if you are, those are great ways to support. Um, but so ways to get involved, ways to support. There are so many ways that people can get involved beyond just donating money. One of those ways would be to talk to landowners. Like landowners cannot make this choice for the future of their land and how it will be owned and stewarded if they don't know about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So talking to them about this and like sharing this as a new option or an opportunity for the future can go so far and mean so much before they get to the point of crisis where they have to sell it on the open market. Like because this process takes time. It's, you know, the planning involved and all the pieces that have to come together take a long time. And so to get to the point of conversation, even to then be able to build out a future opportunity. So like talking to landowners is a huge, great way. if you
And
have
and on that,
connection.
wait, Christian, on that one, I also want to like nuance because we this didn't come up in our conversation, but I wanted this nuance for folks out there. When people do give their lease over, or they like do this 99-year lease, that doesn't mean the landowners have to leave the land, right? They can like die on the land, they can be on the land, they can be cared for by the new farmers on the land, right? Like this doesn't mean they just like,
Fully.
right?
Yeah, like one of the Farmland Commons, elder farm couple, biodynamic farmers that have created this farm, created health in the ecosystem and earth, like they are gifting farm in. They are retaining a life estate where they are going to live out the rest of their life in the house they built, and then they're retaining the right to be buried back into the soil they've cultivated.
That's a big thing. I want to, Christina, as you mentioned that for people, I think that's really important because people are not dying well, right? In America,
No,
especially, it's really people are dying,
fully.
whether they're rich or poor, landowners or not, nobody's dying well right
Right.
now. So how can we die better is a conversation that's really
Fully.
alive for me.
Yeah.
Okay, but continue, Christina. I interrupted
Yeah,
you.
no, that I'm so glad we brought that up. Like that's such a rich aspect of this too, because so many land trusts, like if they were going to take ownership of land, they would tell them, okay, but you have to move.
Yeah.
Like you have to leave. And, like that's not how we operate. And like that's not a good way to be in relationship with people or land. So yeah, thank you so much for bringing that opportunity up. I think also like if you know or are part of an organization that does education or outreach or raises interest in any way, like hosting conferences or webinars or like online informational things, like invite us, like mention us, like if you know people or are part of or like have a relationship with anybody who does like press items or like bring this up. Like the more that people can know about it, like that's such a helpful way to leverage what we're doing and like help build this momentum. And like I cannot stress this enough is like when people do these things, they automatically like feel like part of our team. Like when people donate or people connect us to things or like get us on a thing or like it's like you're joining our team. It genuinely feels like that. Leveraging business relationships to host like a roundup or a percentage of sales or anything that can help raise money for a specific Farmland Commons project or just organizationally is so helpful. We also have a relationship with this organization that makes it so that you could donate a car or truck or RV or tractor or like farm machinery. And like that could be something that you then get a tax write off for, but then goes to support one of these projects or a different one. So, yeah, lots of different ways to get involved. Obviously, each Farmland Commons page has its own,
Yeah.
you could sign up for individual newsletters and obviously we'd love for you to sign up for our newsletter, but each commons you can sign up for their newsletter. And then, there are donor walls that show on the donation pages that you can like donate, get your name on there, show that you're like part of this project happening. And, you know, building community is something that happens in place, but also with this virtual world that we live in, it's so easy to do it in this larger form. And we have seen that help so many farms now of being able to access larger markets and like have people connected to and supporting you means so much, obviously, for that bottom line dollar, but also like morale of like
Right.
keeping going.
Yeah, and I want to hear from you, Ian, on this one too. But I'm also curious. I noticed that one of the unique parts about the 501c25 is that there is an advisorship that isn't like, necessarily local to that commons, right? And that advisorship, I love how like that mentality of like having folks be there to support with their different levels of skills and experience. Is that also another way people can get involved? Like if there is, like an amazing doctor who's like an MD who's really into like biodynamic and Ayurveda and like regenerative farming, would they be like, could they join on as an advisor in a community that's wanting to do like health centered or a health clinic? I'm just giving examples. Like, is there an openness around advisorships
Oh,
participating?
fully. Yeah. And as individual, and really that in some ways differs by what that community need is,
Mhm.
but then also like as like into the model itself, into the Farmland Commons. So each Farmland Commons needs three or more nonprofit 501c3s, and then those 501c3s are appointing people to be board members and advisors to that Farmland Commons. So a lot of our work is reaching into our relationships and building new relationships to find the right nonprofit partners to form that Farmland Commons and to find the right people who are then appointed as board members or advisors to that structure so that the more we can build a broad community of people that support this, either, nationally or locally to place or both, or kind of values aligned with a handful of, all the better in that. Yes.
On that note, I'm gonna pin a nonprofit that I'm an executive director of. This is a healthcare nonprofit that is all about connecting food as medicine, farming as medicine, and just and focusing on ecological medicine. So we have a whole network of doctors and nurses and people who actually are like stepping away from the way that medicine has been harming everybody and reimagining medicine. So if you guys ever need this 501(c)(3), and I saw that you guys have a faith commons. There's a whole other conversation. We might have to have a part two of this, okay? But I'm also on the board of the Interfaith Center of Oxford, Ohio. And so if you want to tune into this a really powerful interfaith organization, and that's also another space I've been imagining is how do we bring in the different faith communities to actually who have a lot of access to land and also have a spiritual connection to like the next generation, making the world better, right? How do we lean into that? So I just want to drop these two different 501(c)(3)s that I'm a part of that might be beneficial in some way. Um,
That's a big part of it. The 501(c)(3s, we just need land and we're off to the races.
right? Okay, and last but not least, thank you guys so much for going a little bit over. This is like such a rich conversation, very biodynamic conversation, right, Christina? Last question for you guys, both of you guys, right? Because it's gonna be a different answer from both of you. What is your advice for people to get involved, like civically, like politically, like what is right now, like especially with what's going on in the world right now? What is your advice for like how can folks get involved civically and politically?
I think that the world in so many ways is overwhelming, and like we're so interconnected virtually to it. Like we're asked to hold empathy for things that we're never going to be connected to because we see them on our screen. And it's, that's a lot. That's destroying, suffocating us in so many ways. Like we need to kind of hold a balance of what's happening in the broader world, in our country, with what we can tangibly do on the ground with people we know and hold relationship with communities we're part of. And really that tangible action is what I would advocate for people to do. So find something that is, a passion that has a direct way that you can tangibly make change in a way that, may be solely local to community, maybe community rippling out around the country or around the world. Like, I feel so fortunate to have that balance of very local on land community work that's regional and national across the country, but really that find something that can be a tangible action and take steps to find your place in it and move things forward.
Well, that was exactly what I was going to say. So it was. I will add, I guess, that we just recently opened up the opportunity to have volunteers, which, we just feel like we have the infrastructure in place now to do that. And we've had several people, like a surprising amount of people reach out and say, like, we want to help. We want to volunteer to raise money for these projects that you have. And like that is such a helpful thing to do. So like if you don't know where to start or like, come talk to us and we'd love to have you volunteer to help raise money for these projects we have going. So
Yeah, and I feel like what you guys are doing is so alive with food and community and the future. It's a really common sense thing to get involved with that's beyond like do dialectics, right? It's not like Republican, Democrat, right or left. It's like no, this is just around land and food and community. So really appreciate you guys.
and really in that thing, that back to that very beginning opening question, I feel like we just like gone full circle here because really like that Republican, Democrat, like that thing, like it's so up to the whim of whoever's involved, and then it can get, like things and policies that people have advocated for decades, then get turned over. So it's like, this is forever. Like, this is tangible change that impacts people and community in perpetuity. Like, once we move land out of the speculative market into a farmland commons, it's there forever. And then that 99-year, like, this is tangible change that is positive and good that you can look at for years to come, be like, I helped do that.
Yeah. I love that I've been arguing with some of my friends these days when they're like, "Oh, I'm putting my money in gold or I'm putting my money in this and this cryptocurrency, whatever." And I'm like, "But you can't eat that." Like, like so I think like land is actually the most valuable thing that we have, and yet at the same time when we commodify it the wrong way or it gets kind of separate, it causes so much harm to so many things, not just humans, but the biodiversity and nature. So thank you guys so much for your work. This is just planting the seed for many more conversations. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share? Is there anything that we didn't talk about or anything that you feel you need to?
Yeah, well, I would be super grateful for everyone to sign up for our newsletter because when we have big announcements and when there's land opportunities, like those are the first people who get to hear about it is in our newsletter. And then also connecting with us on your favorite social media. So like whatever social media that you love the most, like you could probably find us there and we'd love to be connected that way. Obviously, like a donation would be so appreciated and grateful. We have our active fundraiser right now. We didn't even talk about that project, but it is in Ohio where you are connected to that interfaith group. So that's cool. But yeah, that's an example of an aging, retiring farming couple who are giving a discounted bargain sale of their land into a farmland commons, and it's the first earthship east of the Mississippi. Like, it's totally rad, and there's already a next generation steward family on the land, like caring for the land. And yeah, we just need to raise the money to get that land, so help us out.
And
Uh,
BBC just featured it in a short film, A Love for the Land, which is really what we're talking about here, right? Like a love for the land, for ourselves, for each
Okay,
other.
I'm just gonna pin this. We're recording this, but whatever, I'll share it anyways. But I've been nudging. Our Interfaith Center out there in Ohio, we are in the process of selling a property, and that property there's like they're like these typical organizations, right? That take the money and they like invest it into the stock
Right,
market, and then you guys know, right? All this stuff, all the and it's but even though it's a religious, it's like so I've been asking the question like, is this money like funding wars and funding
right,
harm
right.
and funding pesticides because we're literally an interfaith organization that has a mission. We should not be putting this money into like harming anything. So maybe
Totally.
this is a conversation to be had. What if that money, instead of it going into the back into the stock market, what if it goes into a project like this? So anyways,
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right. Stuff
Holy,
like
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, totally. Now I have to make a plug too, because we feel the same way you do. So, the Farmers Land Trust and each of us personally, actually, not to get like too much into our personal stuff, but we use a bank called Walden Mutual.
oh yeah.
And okay, because they only, because when you use a bank, when you put your money in a bank, it doesn't just sit there. It's being loaned out to
Mhm.
other
Mhm.
entities or uses, like very often for making bombs or like extractive whatever. And so this bank only lends to local food, regenerative agriculture sort of things. So when you put your money in there that they're like using it for good. And so I just have to say that since this topic came up that so yes, very
Yeah.
values aligned.
I know Walden. I've been in good conversations with them about reimagining finance, which is what we're doing here. This is an
Yeah.
amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Ian, you feel complete?
As complete as this one conversation can be, I hope there's many more to come. Both podcasts like this and like how do we collaborate? How do we work
Definitely.
together?
Yes, we'll keep twirling our mustaches and our beards. And you too, one day, Christina, you could twirl your hair, while we twirl our
Oh,
beard.
okay.
Thank you guys so much. Have a beautiful day. Appreciate
Thank
you guys.
you.
Thank you for
Thank you
this
so
work.
much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.